My name is Claire, and according to my family, I've been doing life all wrong. I'm 34 years old with a successful career as an environmental lawyer. I own my condo, I travel when I want, and I've built a life that makes me genuinely happy. But to my family, especially my older sister Rachel, I might as well be a complete failure. Why? Because I don't have children. It wasn't always this way. Growing up, Rachel and I were close despite being opposites. She was the social butterfly who dreamed of a big family, while I was the bookworm who wanted to change the world. We respected our differences and supported each other's paths. At least, that's what I thought. Everything changed when Rachel had her first child at 26. Motherhood became her entire identity. By 32, she had 3 kids and had transformed into someone I barely recognized. Someone who measured a woman's worth solely by her reproductive choices. At first, her comments were subtle. "Don't wait too long, Claire. Your biological clock is ticking." Or, "It's different when they're your own. You'll see someday." I'd smile and nod, letting the remarks slide. After all, she was happy with her choices and I was happy with mine. Live and let live, right? But over the years, as I remained childless by choice, her comments grew sharper, more judgmental. Family gatherings became minefields of passive-aggressive jabs and outright criticism about my selfish lifestyle. All that traveling and working late, for what? Who will take care of you when you're old? Your job helps corporations. My job is raising the next generation. I'd learned to deflect, to smile through gritted teeth, to change the subject. But something inside me was building, a slow-burning anger at being constantly devalued, at having my life choices repeatedly dismissed as meaningless. What Rachel didn't know, what no one in my family knew, was that I had been privately pursuing adoption for the past 18 months. Not because I felt incomplete or because I needed to prove anything, but because I'd met a child who changed everything for me. It happened during a pro bono case I was working on. The state was attempting to seize protected land that bordered a group home for boys with special needs. While gathering evidence about how the children used the natural space for therapy, I met Elijah. He was 12 years old with wide, serious eyes and a brilliant mind trapped in a body that didn't always cooperate. Born with cerebral palsy, he used a wheelchair and struggled with certain fine motor skills. But the moment he started telling me about the endangered butterflies he'd cataloged in the meadow behind the home, I was captivated by his passion. Most people think caterpillars just turn to goo inside the chrysalis and then reform as butterflies, he explained during my second visit. But that's not scientifically accurate. Some of the original structures remain intact during metamorphosis. They transform, but parts of who they were stay with them. Over the next few weeks, as I fought the land development case, I spent more time with Elijah. I learned that he'd been in the system since age 7 when his mother died of cancer. His father had never been in the picture. Potential adoptive parents were often intimidated by his medical needs or were looking for younger children. "It's okay," he told me one afternoon as we watched a monarch butterfly emerge from its chrysalis. "I've accepted that I'll age out of the system. I'm just trying to learn everything I can so I can take care of myself." His matter-of-fact resilience broke something open inside me. This extraordinary child had so much to offer the world. Yet he'd been overlooked time and again because he didn't fit people's ideal image of a child. I couldn't stop thinking about him, couldn't stop worrying about his future, and one day the thought that had been growing quietly in my heart finally surfaced. What if I could be his family? The adoption process was grueling. Home studies, background checks, interviews, mountains of paperwork, and classes on parenting a child with special needs. I kept it private not out of shame, but because I wanted to be certain it would happen before sharing the news. I didn't want to put Elijah through another disappointment if something fell through. And honestly, I was tired of my family's opinions about my life choices. This decision wasn't about proving anything to them. It was about Elijah and the connection we'd formed. For once, I wanted to follow my heart without hearing everyone else's commentary. As the process moved forward, I prepared my home, transforming my spare bedroom into a space for a science-loving 12-year-old. I installed ramps, widened doorways, and made my bathroom accessible. I learned about his medication schedule and therapy routines. I connected with parent groups for children with cerebral palsy. The final approval came through just before Thanksgiving. Elijah would officially become my son the following Monday. He and I had decided together that we would tell my family at Thanksgiving dinner. It seemed like perfect timing, a true reason for gratitude. Elijah was excited but nervous. What if they don't like me, he asked as I helped him pack a small overnight bag at the group home. He would stay with me for the weekend before the official adoption on Monday. They will love you, I assured him, though I had my own anxieties about my family's reaction. And even if it takes time for them to adjust, you and I are a team now. That's what matters. Thanksgiving at my parents' house had always been a traditional affair. The same recipes, the same seating arrangement, the same conversations year after year. I arranged for Elijah to stay with a caretaker from the group home who lived near my parents. The plan was to introduce him after dinner once I'd broken the news. I arrived alone, stomach in knots, but heart full of purpose. Rachel was already there with her husband Mark and their 3 children, who immediately swarmed my father for piggyback rides. My mother bustled around the kitchen, gently slapping away offers of help as she had for decades. Rachel greeted me with the usual once-overs, her eyes lingering disapprovingly on my simple black dress and practical shoes. "No date again?" she asked, handing me a glass of wine. "You know, Melissa from my PTA has a brother who's divorced. He's got a good job in finance. Want me to set you up?" I declined politely, helping to set the table instead. Already I could feel the familiar tension building in my shoulders. Today would be different, I reminded myself. Today, everything would change. Dinner began as it always did, Dad carving the turkey, Mom urging everyone to take seconds before they'd finished firsts, Rachel's kids squirming in their seats. The conversation flowed predictably, neighborhood gossip, updates on distant relatives, gentle ribbing between my father and brother-in-law about sports teams. Then, inevitably, it turned to children. "Tyler's teacher says he's reading 2 grade levels above his age," Rachel announced proudly, ruffling her 8-year-old's hair. "And Emma's been selected for the advanced math program." "That's wonderful," my mother beamed. "You're doing such an amazing job with them, honey." "It's exhausting but worth it," Rachel sighed, the martyr smile I knew so well spreading across her face. "Most fulfilling job in the world." I nodded and focused on my food, thinking of Elijah waiting patiently across town, wondering what his first family Thanksgiving would be like. I'd promised to bring him leftovers of everything so he could taste my mother's famous cooking. "Claire, you've been quiet," my father noted, pulling me from my thoughts. "How's work? Still saving trees?" His tone was affectionate. Unlike Rachel, my parents had generally supported my career, even if they occasionally hinted at their desire for grandchildren from me. "Work is good," I said, smiling genuinely. "We just won a major case protecting a wetland from development, and actually, I have some news I want to share with everyone today." Rachel cut in before I could continue. "Let me guess, another promotion, another award for the office wall?" Her tone was light, but the edge beneath it was unmistakable. "No, not work," I began, but Rachel was on a roll. "Oh, are you finally seeing someone? Please tell me you've met a man who's made you reconsider this whole career woman phase." I took a deep breath. "Actually, because honestly, Claire," she continued talking over me, "I worry about you. All this focus on work and travel, it's not natural. Women are meant to nurture, to create families." "Rachel," my mother cautioned, sensing the direction this was heading. But Rachel, 3 glasses of wine in and riding her favorite hobby horse, wasn't stopping. "No, Mom, someone needs to say it. Claire thinks success is winning cases and making money, but she's missing out on the only thing that really matters in life." The table fell uncomfortably silent. My father shifted in his seat, my mother's eyes darted nervously between her daughters, and Mark suddenly became very interested in helping his youngest with her cranberry sauce. "And what's that, Rachel?" I asked quietly, though I knew exactly what was coming. "Children, of course," she said emphatically, gesturing to her 3 kids as if presenting evidence in court. "Being a mother, creating life, raising the next generation, it's literally the most important job on the planet." I nodded slowly, taking a sip of water. "I respect your choice to be a mother, Rachel. I've always supported your path." "It's not about my path," she scoffed. "It's about natural law. Women who don't have children," she trailed off, shaking her head. "Women who don't have children what?" I prompted, my voice still calm despite the anger building inside me. Rachel glanced around the table, seemingly emboldened by the silence of our parents. "They're not fulfilling their purpose," she stated flatly. "I'm sorry if that sounds harsh, but it's true. All this career stuff is it's a distraction from what really matters." I raised an eyebrow. "So, I'm what? Defective? Selfish? Misguided?" "I didn't say that." Rachel backpedaled slightly before doubling down. "But yes, I think it's selfish to choose a career over creating a family, and honestly, a bit useless in the grand scheme of things. What legacy are you leaving? Who will remember your legal briefs in 100 years? My mother interjected, "Rachel, that's enough. Everyone makes different choices in life." But Rachel was on a roll, her face flushed with wine and righteousness. "You'll never understand real love until you're a mom," she said loudly, looking around the table as if for confirmation. "It's just different. It changes you fundamentally, makes everything else seem shallow in comparison." A few awkward chuckles followed, my father's nervous laugh, Mark's diplomatic smile, even my mother's resigned sigh that seemed to say, "She means well." I didn't laugh, I didn't argue, I didn't defend myself as I had so many times before. Instead, I reached down for my handbag beside my chair and pulled out a manila folder. Without a word, I slid it across the table toward Rachel. She stared at it, confused. "What's this? Some award from your firm you want to show off?" "Open it," I said softly. The table went quiet as Rachel flipped open the folder, her brow furrowed. Inside were the final adoption papers for Elijah, complete with both our names and the court date scheduled for Monday morning. Rachel looked up, confusion written across her face. What is this?" "Adoption papers," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "For my son, Elijah. He's 12 years old, he has cerebral palsy, and the brightest mind I've ever encountered. He's been in foster care since he was 7. The silence around the table deepened. Rachel stared at me, her mouth slightly open. "He's waiting for me in the car," I continued, glancing at my watch. "I thought it would be nice for him to meet his new family over dessert. He's especially excited to meet his cousins." No one moved. No one spoke. The only sound was the ticking of my mother's antique wall clock. My father broke the silence first. "You've adopted a child? When? How?" "I've been going through the process for over a year," I explained, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. "I met Elijah while working on a case. We connected immediately. The adoption will be finalized on Monday." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "A grandson? We have another grandson?" Her voice trembled with emotion. I nodded, smiling now. "Yes. And he's remarkable. He's passionate about science, especially entomology, that's the study of insects," I added, seeing my father's blank look. "He taught himself Japanese because he wants to visit the butterfly sanctuaries in Okinawa someday. He plays chess and creates detailed maps of imaginary worlds and has the most incredible laugh you've ever heard." As I spoke about Elijah, I could see my family's expressions transforming. Shock, giving way to curiosity, confusion to cautious excitement. Everyone except Rachel, who sat rigid in her chair, staring at the adoption papers as if they might bite. "Why didn't you tell us?" my mother asked, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "I wanted to be sure it was going to happen," I replied honestly. "Adoption can be a complicated process with lots of potential roadblocks, and..." I hesitated before deciding to be completely truthful. I was tired of having my life choices judged and found wanting. My gaze moved deliberately to Rachel, who had the grace to flush slightly. "We would never have judged this," my mother insisted, though we both knew that wasn't entirely true. There would have been questions, concerns, suggestions that maybe I should wait for the right man before considering parenthood. "Can we meet him now?" My father was already standing, napkin discarded beside his plate. I checked my watch again. "He's with Diane, his caretaker from the group home, in her car outside. I wanted to tell you first, make sure everyone was prepared." "Well, what are we waiting for?" My mother was on her feet now too, smoothing her dress and patting her hair. "We have a new family member to welcome." As my parents hurried toward the front door, followed by my curious niece and nephews with Mark herding them, Rachel and I were left alone at the table. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "You should have told me," she said finally, her voice small. Would you have been supportive? I asked, not unkindly. Or would you have told me I was doing it wrong, making a mistake, trying to shortcut my way into motherhood without real understanding? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. I stood, gathering my purse. Rachel, I love you. You're my sister. But you don't get to define what makes a family or what constitutes real love. I'm not adopting Elijah to prove anything to you or anyone else. I'm doing it because he needs a family, and I realized I need him too. She looked up then, her eyes swimming with conflicting emotions, embarrassment, defensiveness, and something else I couldn't quite identify. He has special needs, she said softly. That's a big responsibility for a single parent. Yes, it is, I agreed, which is why I've spent the last year learning everything I can about cerebral palsy, connecting with support groups, and modifying my home and schedule to accommodate his needs. I'm not going into this blindly. Rachel nodded slowly, finally standing. Does he call you Mom? I smiled, remembering the conversation Elijah and I had about this very topic. Not yet. We've agreed he'll call me Claire until he feels comfortable with something else. His birth mother was very important to him. I'm not trying to replace her memory. For the first time that evening, I saw a genuine respect flicker across my sister's face. That's really thoughtful. Being a parent isn't about what title you're given, I said gently. It's about showing up, listening, and loving unconditionally. I think you know that better than anyone. Before she could respond, we heard the front door open and the sound of excited voices in the hallway. My heart leapt, knowing Elijah was now inside, meeting my family for the first time. You coming? I asked Rachel, pausing at the dining room door. She hesitated for just a moment before nodding. Yes, I want to meet my nephew. Walking into the living room, I saw Elijah in his wheelchair, surrounded by my family. My mother was already kneeling beside him, admiring the butterfly pin on his sweater that I'd given him when I first told him about the adoption. My father stood slightly back, smiling but uncertain in the way men of his generation often are around children with disabilities. My niece Emma was showing Elijah her tablet, apparently bonding already over a game they both played. When Elijah saw me, his face lit up with the smile that had captured my heart from the beginning. Claire, your mom says I can call her Grandma Jean, is that okay? Of course it is, I replied, moving to his side and resting my hand gently on his shoulder. Elijah, this is my sister Rachel, your Aunt Rachel. Rachel stepped forward, any remaining smugness or judgment completely dissolved from her expression. In its place was genuine curiosity and a hint of remorse. It's very nice to meet you, Elijah, she said warmly. Welcome to the family. Elijah studied her face with the careful attention he gave to new butterflies in his collection. Thank you, he said finally. Claire says you have kids. That means I have cousins, right? Right, Rachel confirmed, gesturing to her 3 children who were watching with varying degrees of interest. Tyler is 8, Emma is 10, and Zoe is 5. I'm 12, Elijah stated proudly. That means I'm the oldest cousin. I've never been the oldest anything before. The simple joy in his voice at this realization, at finding his place in a family hierarchy for perhaps the first time, brought tears to my eyes. Rachel must have noticed because she reached out and squeezed my arm, a silent acknowledgement that left me stunned. The evening transformed after that. We returned to the table for dessert, making room for Elijah's wheelchair between me and my father. The conversation flowed naturally as my nephew charmed everyone with his knowledge of monarch butterfly migration patterns and his excitement about having his own room with space for all my books and specimens. Rachel was quieter than usual, watching the interactions with thoughtful eyes. As the night wore on and the kids grew tired, she helped me gather leftovers for Elijah to take home, carefully explaining which dishes were her specialties and which were our mother's recipes. As I was preparing to leave, Rachel pulled me aside in the kitchen. I was wrong, she said simply, her voice low enough that only I could hear. About you, about what makes a mother. I'm sorry. The apology was unexpected and all the more meaningful for its simplicity. No excuses, no qualifications. Thank you, I replied, truly grateful for her humility in that moment. He's amazing, she continued, glancing toward the living room where Elijah was explaining something to my enthralled father. And so are you for doing this, for seeing what he needed and stepping up. I shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise after years of her criticism. I'm just doing what feels right, same as you did with your kids. Rachel shook her head. No, it's not the same. I followed the traditional path. Everyone applauded my choices, supported me every step of the way. You're blazing a different trail, and that takes courage. Before I could respond, Elijah called from the living room. Claire, Grandpa says he has old butterfly specimens in the attic from when he was a kid. Can we see them next time? Absolutely, I called back, smiling at the way he'd already claimed my father as his grandfather. We'll make a special trip this weekend. As we said our goodbyes and I helped Elijah back into my car, I felt a profound sense of peace. Not because I'd proven Rachel wrong or made my family see me differently, though those were welcome side effects, but because for the first time I was completely aligned with my purpose. Not the purpose others had tried to assign me, but the one I'd discovered for myself. On the drive home, Elijah cataloged all his new relatives with scientific precision. Grandma Jean smells like cinnamon and hugs really tight. Grandpa Joe has rough hands, but he knows a lot about insects from when he was young. Cousin Emma likes the same video games as me. Cousin Tyler thinks my wheelchair is cool. Cousin Zoe is shy, but she showed me her doll. I listened, marveling at how easily he embraced the concept of family despite having been without one for so long. Children are resilient that way, open to love in whatever form it appears. And Aunt Rachel seemed nice, he concluded, but she was looking at you funny sometimes. Is she mad at you? I glanced at him in the rearview mirror, impressed as always by his perceptiveness. No, not mad, just surprised. Sometimes adults get stuck thinking there's only one right way to do things. When someone does it differently, it takes time to adjust. He considered this seriously, like how people used to think monarch butterflies migrated to Brazil until scientists tracked them and discovered they actually go to Mexico. I laughed, delighted by his perfect metaphor, exactly like that. Well, he said decisively, I'm glad you migrated to me instead of wherever else you were supposed to go. My heart swelled. Me too, Elijah. Me too. 3 days later, we stood before a judge who made our family official with the stroke of a pen. Rachel surprised me by showing up at the courthouse with a handmade sign that read, Welcome home, Elijah, and a gift basket filled with books about insects and a butterfly-themed bedroom set. As we celebrated afterward at a restaurant Elijah had chosen, Rachel pulled me aside once more. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she admitted, about what I said at Thanksgiving, about understanding real love. I braced myself, uncertain if this was the beginning of another lecture. You were right not to argue with me, she continued. Actions speak louder than words, and what you're doing for Elijah, that's real love in its purest form. She glanced over at my son, who was happily showing his cousins a new app that identified butterfly species from photos. I think I've been confusing love with biology, she said thoughtfully, as if giving birth is what makes you a mother, but watching you with him, it's opened my eyes. I squeezed her hand, grateful for her growth and honesty. There's no one right way to create a family, I said. What matters is the love you put into it. She nodded, a genuine smile lighting up her face. Well, he's lucky to have you, and we're lucky to have him. Our family just got better. As we rejoined the celebration, I watched Elijah in his element, surrounded by people who cared about him, animated as he shared his passion for science, secure in the knowledge that he belonged. Sometimes the family we're born into doesn't fully see us. Sometimes the path we're expected to follow isn't the one that leads us home. But if we're brave enough to forge our own way, to expand our definition of love and family, we might just find ourselves exactly where we're meant to be. For me, that place is beside a brilliant, kind-hearted boy who taught me that metamorphosis isn't about becoming something entirely new. It's about transforming while keeping the essential parts of who you've always been. And that's a lesson worth learning, no matter how you come to motherhood.